All right, well, thank you guys for being here. I hope it was an encouragement. How many of you guys are a part of like an actual like staff team that has more than just you on the staff? All right. No, well, you're a part of a team still too. So we want to just get some clarity. So if you guys don't mind just sharing where you're from and kind of the role that you play and how long you've been there, whatever else you want to share, go ahead and.
Sure. I'm the senior pastor at a church plant called Gospel Community Church, and I'm the worship leader.
Yeah. Nat?
My name is Nat Keelan. I'm the senior pastor at Calvary Baptist Church in Quincy, Illinois. I've got an associate. The church has had a history of worship pastors, but it has not gone well in the last. Well, I mean, the one we have, she's not a worship pastor, but she kind of takes that role. But what we had before that really just destroyed worship in the church. So we're really kind of in this rebuilding, and even getting that communicated to the current leader too, that we need to rebuild. And so it's gone really well, but we're still at that early stage.
Well, I heard from other people on your team, and they're very thrilled to have you there. So if that's any encouragement to you, none of them are here to say I'm lying.
No, but I'm
so.
They're all amazing.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're all human, and we learn traits from those who've come before us and stuff. So sometimes it's just a matter of unlearning some things, including myself.
Yeah.
And I grew up in the church and left for 20 years. I didn't leave the faith. I mean, I moved away and then came back. So prophet is not welcome in his hometown, but we'll see how that goes, right?
Yeah.
Daniel Anderson, go to Danvers Baptist Church, play bass and guitar. And yeah, I was on watch list. Yeah.
He gets nervous when you watch him. You can't tell when you're paying attention.
Oh, yeah. No, I was learning.
Yeah.
So,
Bob Clark, Danvers Baptist Church, and so we have, besides myself, a full-time office staff and several part-time.
I'm Aaron Kath, also Danvers Baptist Church, guitar during service.
Yeah. You guys are forming quite the team over there. Mm-hmm. You've got like multiple musicians and stuff now.
We have multiple musicians and singers.
Yeah,
Sunday, right?
that's awesome.
Yeah, you're getting a mic this Sunday.
Yeah. So do you get to play bass and sing now?
yeah.
Is it tricky?
Yeah. I don't know music.
He's a nat. He can't read sheet music.
I
He's
cannot
learned
read a
everything from
music.
Can I tell you a trick?
Oh.
I also don't read sheet music, and I'm in charge of the whole thing. So Heather actually charts out most of our sheet music for us now. We're finally working with Emma when she comes back because she's going to Moody and learning all about that stuff. And so we're finally getting to a point where we're going to be creating sheet music for our team for the songs we do. But if it makes you feel better, it's not a requirement to worship.
The most inadequacy
So
I have ever felt in my life was when I was leading the music, like directing the music, with no capabilities.
that's when you just fall back on I'm leading worship, and that I know how to do. So we'll just point. Yeah, don't be a swinger. That's not good. That is not all of life is worship. All right, well, so these are all people from our team. They came just so they can get in on the gossip here and talk. Do you guys know most of the stories about Josh and I, though, these guys from our church, and so they can validate. I would like to believe they could validate how far we've come in the work that God has done. And so I will tell you, we're always learning and growing. And so I think some of you guys did come last year, and it kind of happened. We didn't plan on having a staff relationships conversation, but I think it gets brought up because it's an obvious issue because, when you've got 4, 5, 6 people on a team trying to work together, all trying to do their version of glorifying God and leading in worship, there's a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts. And so if you were here last year, you heard the story. We started kind of, I guess you'd call it interning in like 2018. And there was a time when I legitimately did not think we would make it to our second year at Grace. Like it was pretty rough for a little while, and you might hear the Bar S incident story at some point or another tonight. But Josh and I are extremely different people, and if it wasn't for a redeeming work of Jesus, we wouldn't. And he's changed both of us, and I think honestly changed the culture of our church in that. And so we'll offer a little bit of insight, probably next maybe 10 minutes or so, and you just jump in whenever you feel like it. Sure. I struggle. One of the things that God's growing me in, and that Josh has helped me in, Emily, my other wife. This is my wife and my work wife. And
I was like, wait a minute. Whoa.
well, actually, we've established I'm the wife in the relationship, but what they've helped, I can, one of my struggles is I get excited and interrupt people, and so I'm going to present the notes, and you can interrupt me whenever you want to jump in. But these are what I would say are things I wish I knew in 2020. So the world fell apart, you guys know that, and I became a streaming expert and a video and media expert and a recording expert on top of figuring out how to transform our worship culture. And so it was a very stressful and trying time. And I'm a type of person that wants and needs validation, sometimes in an unhealthy way. And Josh gives validation through helping you improve, which is typically what I call criticizing. He would call it constructive critique. And so we were both trying to sharpen one another in a not healthy way. And of course, 2020, no one's healthy. We're all, mental messes. And so God really transformed our hearts during that time. And so here's some things that I wish I would have learned in 2020. Hopefully it'll be helpful to you. So number one, you're all on the same team, work together. That's unity. And I'm, as Alan Parr says, a slave to alliteration. And so this will kind of go together. But you're all on the same team, work together. That's unity. Three things that are necessary: communication, clarity, and community. Communication takes practice. And again, you look at 2020, we were all falling apart. Well, we weren't together. We weren't communicating. You need to explain how you're feeling. You need to talk about what bothers you. You need to celebrate what excites you. And one of our biggest flaws as a staff and as a leadership will always come back to a lack of communication, whether it's, us guys on staff, the ladies on staff, or even like our team meetings where the ladies came to us and said, we never know what's going on because we have a Monday morning meeting and then we don't ever communicate with the other 3 people on staff. And so we do a staff meeting now about once a month where we all communicate together. The second one, clarity. Set expectations and boundaries. Be open, honest, and vulnerable. This takes practice. I think it was, I don't remember if it was Dave Ramsey or Craig Groeschel initially that said it, but to be unclear is to be unkind. And in a lack of clarity, when assumptions are made, there's problems, especially relationally. And so communication, clarity. And the last one, community. If you don't have a good relationship with the people you serve with, first of all, it's not biblical. But second of all, it's just not fun. Like it's not enjoyable to just come in and work by yourself or work with people that you don't know very well, or worse yet, that you don't get along with. And so communication is necessary. A pause if you have any insight or anything to add on that.
No.
All right, thank you. So number one, you are all on the same team, work together. And that's a big thing, is just perspective. Like, recognizing this is empathy is another one on top of unity. You can put backsplash empathy, but identifying that person you're serving with wants the same thing as you, and realizing they're not fighting against me. They're trying to fight with me. We don't do it the same way, and thank God for that. And so number one, you're all on the same team, work together. The second thing, you all need to grow, so grow together, and that's humility. Every person is flawed, and every person will fail, but you can only control you. And when we work with other people, it's important to recognize that there's always something different we can do. When there's relational strain, there's always something different that we could do. Now, sometimes the blame is 90-10. Sometimes it's 95-5, but it's never 100-0. When there's relational strain, there's always something, at a minimum, that you can learn from. In 2020, I think I told this story last year, but our people, let's just be honest, we're in very conservative USA. It's very, It's very closed-minded in some ways as a church and politically, and all the opinions that were there, and not only surrounding music but surrounding politics. And Emily and I, we really struggle with that because we're not liberal, but we're millennials, and so we like to think we can identify with people that think differently. And it was very frustrating for us to not fall into the trap. And I remember going for a walk with Emily and talking to her about it, and saying, like, these people will not change. Like, they don't get it. They're just making such a big deal of all these things, Bible translations and the songs we do and politics, and they're making all these things bigger than Jesus. And so this might not be the church for us. And Emily, I don't know if you remember saying this or not, but she basically just very calmly and quietly, like she does, was like, well, if we leave and that's the reason we leave, then wouldn't we be making those things bigger than Jesus as well? And so it's important for us to recognize, like, it was easy for me to be like, I wish Josh would compliment me. But at the same time, Josh is going, I wish that you would pay closer attention to detail. I wish that you would be more on task. I wish that you would get things done that you say you're going to get done, right? And so it's easy for us to go, oh, I wish that they would change, but to recognize, like, we're all growing together, and the only person I can change is me. And so having that humility, first of all, to have the communication to say, hey, this is how I'm wired, for good or bad, but to also have the humility to say, now I want you to speak into this if there's an area that I can grow to help you. And so it's really important to just recognize that. What do I need to change is an important question. John Maxwell quoted someone. Do you remember who he quoted in the 21 Laws of Leadership? It might have been like Oprah or somebody like that. It was something weird. But he said, I won't learn anything from anything that I have to say today. Do you remember who the quote was from? It was somebody. Who was it from? I don't remember. Michael Scott. It's Dashmar going. But he said, I won't learn anything from anything I have to say today. So sometimes it's important to ask a question and then shut up and actually be humble enough to hear the answer. And collaboration happens when we listen to one another. And so I think Josh has done a really good job of that as well, identifying and capitalizing on each other's strengths, and identifying and emphasizing and empathizing with each other's weaknesses. And so, like our staff meetings now, I run the staff meetings just because Josh hates to do it and I don't mind doing it. And it's a really good way for us to show unity and humility. And again, I interrupt people, so if I have the notes, it's okay, then everybody else can jump in and I don't have to interrupt anybody, So like having the humility to say it's not one of us that's leading, but we're just a team working together. And so there's a lot of areas like that I think we've really grown in. Give space for one another while calling one another up. Give space for one another while calling one another up. So there's an element of giving grace that goes too far, where it's no longer giving grace if you're allowing somebody to continue in a pattern that is unhealthy. And so we had to both grow in that, and I think Pastor Andrew as well, where there's stuff that doesn't really matter too much that you can just be patient and humble about and just let be. And then there's other stuff that is truly important that we need to speak into. And so we give space for one another while also still calling one another up. And clarity and communication and community helps with that, because we're able to have those dialogues and it's not awkward or uncomfortable. We're just constantly giving feedback on the stuff that matters. And there's still stuff that we do that probably frustrates one another, but the ones that aren't important, we go, that's not that big a deal. I don't need to be upset. And the stuff that is a big deal, there's a constant line of communication. So give space while calling each other up. And then the last one, you're all in need of grace, forgive together. Forgiveness is a team sport. And if you are on a team or you are in a relationship that forgiveness is not present, it will not be healthy or successful. And so I think even just like, 2 weeks ago, I think in our staff meeting, and Pastor Josh interrupted somebody. And Misty, we were talking about a plan, and Misty was bringing forth an idea, and we had talked through the idea probably about 10 or 15 minutes. And Pastor Josh was like, okay, we get it. Next topic, And I was like, yeah, that's probably true, But Josh texted all of us after, and he said, you know what, I interrupted Misty. And he said, that was absolutely wrong of me. And he said, I apologize, no harm done. We were all, we all appreciate it. We said, thank you for being open about this. This is an important thing for all of us. And how much more to Misty as well, to be publicly, hey, I was interrupted publicly. I want to be apologized to publicly. And I think that's a pretty regular part of our DNA now for me to be like, hey, man, sorry, I dropped the ball on this one, And if we're not consistently forgiving, and that's why it says you're all in need of grace, forgive together. If you wrong someone publicly, apologize publicly. Like that opens the door for humility, transparency, and unity. And so it's a super important and super helpful thing to just make space for that and to say, hey, I messed up. Some weeks will be more than others. And what that does too is it opens the door for what I would consider preemptive apology, which is like there's some weeks where I've come to Josh and said, hey, we've got a lot going on this week. Like I'm going to be in and out of the office. Or he'll say like, hey, I'm struggling with this. Like if I get upset about this, this is where I'm at, where it's not like we're saying, hey, I'm going to sin against you, just preparing you now, but instead we're opening the dialogue to say, I want you to know how I'm feeling and where I'm at. And so if I'm short with you, or if I drop the ball, this is what's going on. And it gives us a chance even to be humble together, to pray together, to encourage one another. And again, to make space for one another without just ignoring one another's flaws. Because if we're not growing together, then we're just an echo chamber of unhealth, And so that's been super helpful for us. I don't know if you have other insight on either of those, but.
Well, I think pretty much every leader that speaks on leadership and teams and things like that, they always say that the smartest leaders surround themselves with people that are more capable than them, especially in areas that we're not gifted. And that's absolutely correct, and I'm blessed to be able to have a team like that that is definitely gifted in areas that I'm not. And while there are a lot of benefits to it, there are drawbacks to that as well. Because when you surround yourself with people that are not like you, you have people that are not like you around you. And it's difficult for certain people that have certain temperaments, like myself, to be able to be understanding of people that are not like you. And that's something that I've been challenged in. And I think it's important to remember when you're leading a team, especially, I would venture to say that guys that come to a meeting on staff relationships have a level of humility to them just because of the fact that you're here. The guys that may need that sometimes look at it and go, I'll be fine. And that would have been me.
My staff is fine.
Right, yeah. So I think that might be just maybe even better left unsaid, but I do think it's important to acknowledge the differences in people. And Mark alluded to that earlier, that he is a guy that needs affirmation, and I'm a guy that doesn't really give affirmation. Like I literally, like if I tell you, that was good work today, like I'm affirming you, in my mind. But Mark's a little needy. He needs And so it's that give and take. It's me being willing to give more than a, hey, good work, and him at the same time being willing to accept, hey, good work, when that's all I have to offer at the moment because I'm being selfish or whatever. And so from my perspective, that's been something that I've been able to learn that I think has been helpful, not only for between us, but also with Andrew, and then also bringing that home and seeing that even in my own children, how they're all wired differently, and as a leader, recognizing that and walking in it, which requires humility, not just to give more than you want to give, but also humility to take the time to learn the kind of people that they are. What is it that motivates them? So that's been healthy, I believe.
Do you guys, and this is not a biblical thing, but have you guys done any kind of like personality evaluation, the DISC or, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, like any of those kind of things? Don't go crucifying me or something, saying they're like not biblical or something, but some of those things can be really helpful tools too. Like I took the DISC and the Myers-Briggs when I worked at Samaritan, and that was really helpful to recognize, some of your great strengths and great weaknesses, and to be able to identify those in others too. It was that quote, learn your people enough to love them and love them enough to learn them. And use that at home if you don't even just use it with the people you work with. But what are some areas that you guys have seen then, because we can just open it up for discussion. What are some areas that you've seen you struggle most with, as far as like working as a unit or as a team? What are some things that have been difficult for you guys, and maybe some best practices that have worked in your kind of context of ministry?
Being the youngest adult male in the church, having an older generational church, so you have to, one, be the elder, but then you also have to respect the experience and wisdom before. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, just leading people in that direction. I'm going to the extreme here. I'm not the youngest adult male, but I'm on the lower end of the spectrum.
Yep.
You know, so that comes into play with our worship as well too. So it's just a matter of navigating those waters, but then knowing there'll be a time I'll be the oldest, and that type of thing. But that's a harder one.
Mm-hmm.
Is not letting someone despise your youth, but also knowing when to not demand that.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
And the thing that's working against you is you've only been there since July.
Right.
Many
I
of them
grew
know
up
you.
there,
Right.
and see, that's the other thing that kind of works against me too, because for many people, I was the snot-nosed teenage kid with pastoral aspirations, then disappeared, came back, and now they have to see me as an adult, whereas they saw me as being in my early 20s, and probably not so much of an adult. I was a deacon and all that type of thing. So that's another hurdle to get past. So I know for me, I'm on the beginning of a long obedience in the same direction. That it's going to take years to get to the point.
And just navigating in the meantime.
Yeah.
And you hate hearing that. I can remember first starting out, a guy telling me, that it's going to take 10 years before this community recognizes that you're a legitimate church.
Yeah.
And it's going to take about 8 or 9 years for the people in your church to be patient enough with you to get to the place. And it's like, yeah, whatever. And then you get 8, 9, 10 years
And you
into
find it out.
They're exactly right.
I understand that totally, the experience. At my previous pastorate, I pushed too quick, too fast. And not that it was bad, but it just crumbled all that foundation that God had laid at the beginning of it.
Yeah.
So.
To Josh's credit, a lot of the areas, one of the biggest areas I've grown in is not pushing too much too fast. And there was times, part of the struggle in our relationship was that, like, we got hired on in the fall of 2018, but to us, like, we had been doing it since the spring of 2018. So then when we got hired on, it was like, oh, I've already been doing this. I'll just get the keys to the kingdom. You know what I mean? Like, let's start moving. Let's start making changes. And to Pastor Josh's credit and in his wisdom, it was like, no, let's slow down. And the idea of big moves slow, slow moves fast, or small moves fast. The bigger your church, the slower you move. The bigger the change, the slower it is. And to be able to, again, be humble enough to actually ask for that insight and to then receive it. And getting insight from people that have been there longer is really, really helpful, because Josh knew our people and how they would respond to certain changes that I didn't know.
How did you guys adapt or move towards that culture of change? I know time is a factor, but as believers, we're changed from one degree of glory to another. Christians should be the most adept to change.
Should.
Right? we're all there.
Yeah.
I'm finding at my stage in life, there's still some things I'm like, why are we doing that different?
Yeah.
So I know I'm going to be that guy, right? But at the same time, it's getting them to move forward with that.
We preached it long before we actually implemented a lot of it. When you say?
Yeah. Yeah, and alluded to, one of the game changers for us as a church, and I think everyone in this room kind of comes from similar backgrounds, but one of the game changers for us is God had allowed us to have a lot of people from similar backgrounds like that. And it was just a study of Galatians verse by verse. And it was about that time, wasn't it? 2018-ish or so, that we went through that. And the book of Galatians just talks about everything that we wanted to talk about, and you don't have to work it up, it's right there, it's so plain. And that prepared, I think, a lot of our people. You guys are here, I think that prepared a lot of us for the changes that we had.
Changing from, say, a very fundamental conservative culture to fundamental...
This is on staff relations, Nat. Don't get excited.
What you're getting at, because the relationships of the staff communicate that to the...
Exactly.
We set the tone.
And we have to be united.
Right.
Some of the stuff we haven't changed, it's because we're still working through it. The way we're structured and those kind of things, I feel like we don't make a change for the church to see unless at least the 6 of us are together,
Yeah, and just pull back the curtain. These guys don't know about this yet, but we've been trying to take an honest look at what does New Testament church leadership look like, and is our church structure consistent with that? And so just Wednesday, we started a study with 10 men in the church of just going through where the Bible talks about pastors, elders, bishops, deacons.
Right.
And what is the New Testament structure for leadership? Are we consistent with that? And if not, what do we need to change?
Right.
And so...
Because a lot of our churches are patterned after the American idea of government.
Sure.
Right.
And we do not have any expectation. Like this other stuff, we kind of knew where we wanted to go.
Right.
You know, we knew we wanted to make some changes in music style, dress style, that kind of stuff. But with this, there is no preconceived notion like we want to be here. We just want to be consistent with the
You're writing
scriptures.
together.
Right, but the reason we bring that up though is because like you said, we've decided in that group of men, we want to have consensus about what this church is supposed to do moving forward. And so I think that plays into staff relationships, you know, having people on board.
Okay.
Surprise.
On staff, and we're a part of the relationship, so it is like there's a tangible difference in the way that we interact with one another on staff over the last probably 2 years or so. You know what it was? It was that trip to the Grand Canyon we took. Josh and I went to Idea Summit 2 years ago in Vegas, and Pastor Andrew couldn't make it, and Oliver was just born, so Emily couldn't go, and so then Misty didn't go because she would be the only spouse that went. It would have just been me and Josh and Misty going to Las Vegas together. That would have been weird. So Josh and I went, and it was January of 2021. So we were just, you know, God was just really starting to bring us back together. And then we basically went on a borderline honeymoon together because we went to this conference, and then we had 2 days to kill. And so we went to the Grand Canyon, and we drove to the California border just because I had never been there. And Emily and Misty are forever mad at us for it. But would you guys say that there's been like a tangible, practical, like palpable difference in the way that we are together over the last couple years as opposed to before? Would you say it's different? No. All right. That's not helpful, Matt. Never mind. Don't like that answer.
I know one thing I appreciate out of all the staff we have at Grace is just their pure transparency. You know, and that, you know, plays into the relationship between the staff a little bit, but that's a huge part of the relationship of the staff to the rest of the church, to, you know, people that just attend services and also, you know, any volunteer that's part of it. You know, it's a blessing to have staff that isn't afraid to let people know they're human.
Yeah.
You know, I've been places where it's not that way, and it's an encouragement.
Yeah. Yeah, staff relationships goes beyond just the, you know, us four no more or whatever. That's true. That's a good point. Have you guys seen it? Oh, were you going to jump in?
No, go ahead.
Have you guys seen anything that you've noticed is helpful as far as building relationships with the people in your church? The Clarks are really good at this, even with others. Like, they love having people over to their house. And have you seen other areas, you know, that kind of intentional discipleship has happened where you can, not just your staff relationship with the people you're on staff with, but even like with the rest of your church?
We do that often, all kinds of things. I wish Jessica was here. I'm not a very good leader of staff. I'll just tell you that, because I want it my way and I want it now. And if we decide to do this, then why aren't we doing it like right now? Let's just stop and go get it, right? And so it's been a journey, mostly in the last, probably since 2018. I was very hard driving, and Jess probably had breakdowns because it's my wife and his wife are the paid part-time and full-time staff, and then me, right? So then when I had my back injury and I was down, the Lord taught me a lot of things, that life goes on without me. I'm not that important, and that just take time to invest and to talk to people. I'm still not that good at it. Sometimes I do interrupt. Sometimes they'll be talking, I'll be like, just stop. We're just, this is what we're doing. I don't want to hear any more of it. Stop. We've already decided. But taking more time to listen to what other people say, and instead of me being the first to talk when we have a staff meeting, I let everybody else ask and tell and talk, and then if I have anything else I can say, because a lot of times they'll come up to the same conclusion that I was going to, and so why do I have to push my way when they can come to their own? Like talking down to them. We took Myers-Briggs as a staff, and I do all my premarital counseling, and even I think we did our couples retreat and everything, because I really think, not that it's a perfect thing, but I think it reveals some great insights on, even now, part of our banter as staff and even as deacons and stuff is we know their personality type, so we can actually use humor to cope with the differences rather than letting it be a frustration. We turn into a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And so I don't even know what your question was. I just know that I'm not very good at this.
No, that's good. That's helpful.
I'm trying to be better at it.
Well, that's the whole idea of give space for one another while calling one another up. Is there's a healthy way to not be passive aggressive, which is another flaw of mine that I'm working on, but not be passive aggressive while still not just being aggressive either. Not being passive or aggressive or passive aggressive, but being like, So, because we have like passive and aggressive and passive aggressive, and then no, it's and so yeah, there's like you said, humor is a healthy way to do that as long as it's done in the right way, and yeah, that's really helpful insight. One thing I was going to say too to you, Nat, is and Josh has helped with this a lot, and as well, if you don't listen to the Craig Rochelle podcast, you should, as far as the leadership podcast goes. But there's a couple different resources he's put out that I can share if I can find them about this kind of thing. And he points back to the power of questions and just asking questions. And that I think has been helpful, at least for me, in kind of the same thing, leading an older generation, as well as even in like kind of leading Josh in certain ways and him leading me, is asking people questions and letting them get to the answer, or letting them discover the answer they think is not the right one, and even in counseling too. And you look at the example of Jesus, our friend Bill Allison talks about it all the time, how many questions he asked, because it's more helpful to have them discover the answer for themselves. But the other thing that questions have done too is they open the platform to give people a chance to speak in. So to regularly get feedback. And speaking of Pastor Andrew, we all, after we speak on a Sunday, will say, did you have any feedback on this? And really mean it. Want the criticism and the critique, because it helps you to grow. And so to your point, Nat, asking people hey, how can I better help our church worship? Or how can I better help our church engage? Or, hey, you've been here longer than me. It doesn't seem like a lot of people want to lead a life group, or a lot of people want to serve on Sunday. What can I do to help with that? Because it shows them your heart for humility, to where then hopefully eventually it'll be a part of your culture where they'll come to you and ask. But if they don't, at least there's insight there where you can say, hey, you help me with this, and if it's okay, I'd like to speak into this. I asked about people leading. Part of why I asked is because you would be somebody that would do a great job at leading. Do you think you would consider it, And so questions really have helped us to open that door for the dialogue, more than just saying, hey, I noticed this about you, but to go, hey, this is something I struggle with. What do you think I should do about this? And then to have them hear themselves give the answer that they kind of maybe also need too. So I don't know if you have any insight on that, but how that's played out practically before.
Not on that, but one of the things that I've tried to start doing recently is, again, we're all wired differently. So for me, in the past, when I've seen something that needs to be addressed, just address it. Just say it, But that doesn't always work for everyone. And so what I've tried to start doing is, if I have something that isn't of great importance, maybe it's something more of a botherance rather than importance, is I'll kind of keep a running tally of those things and ask the Lord for opportunities to bring those up. And it's been pretty cool to see how the Lord brings those opportunities up, both with Andrew and Mark, to where I don't have to bring it up. They actually bring it up, and then we just address it from there. And it's oftentimes a lot more healthy way of working through difficulties. Because most of us that come, again, if you're at a staff relationships thing, you want to be healthier, and you're going to be healthier when you find yourself in those difficult spots. That's kind of what I think we're looking for, is when I find myself in those difficult spots, what do I do? And if it's not something of great importance, just make it a matter of prayer and ask the Lord for that opportunity. Because then it not only is a healthier way of dealing with it, but also it's an answer to prayer. It increases your faith, So it's encouraging to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Mark,
jump in.
You
You don't have to raise your hand, Bob. We're all just talking.
I just want to interrupt you, Josh.
No, you're
So, keep laughing.
I know. Reed jokes that Pastor Andrew was our staff marriage counselor for a while. We joke about the work thing. Andrew was caught in the middle of some drama for a little while, but what a great, humble person to have doing it. Go ahead, Bob.
So, it's a little disjointed, but one of the things that we implemented long time ago, even when limited staff is, we started out with Slack, but we use Microsoft Teams.
Oh, yeah.
And so we have channels for topics. We do all of our communication. So we don't text. We text personally, but we don't text business. We put all the business communication on Teams, so it's separate.
That's a good idea.
And that way there's a record of our conversations, and then we post summaries of our meetings, so we know who was accountable for what and who, so for follow-up, so we don't, things don't miss and fall through the cracks. It still happens, but we've consistently used Teams to where it's part of our culture now, is everything's Teams, because it takes video links, it takes everything, and it's a record. That way everybody can see, so there's not somebody left out of the loop. Like if they missed something, it's still there, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know where that plays in for people, but we use it hours a day.
That's an awesome idea. We created a Trello board like a year ago and then did nothing with it. But I would say that's probably a shortcoming on our staff's part for sure. Like we have a group text, and I feel like that's grown us relationally, but organizationally, I would say that's still a weak point for us. So that's really helpful insight. As whatever platform it is, it would be good to have.
Because it keeps our file, so you drop a file that we're all collaborating on or whatever. I felt like it was too intrusive to be texting people on their number.
Sure.
I wanted to separate the business, and so
That's awesome.
That was helpful for me too. So
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, sometimes it is really difficult when you do the community and relationship thing well to not only get together. We felt that way, I feel like. I don't know if you, Andrew and Josh, if you guys have felt that way, where we finally, I think this year, just gotten to a point where we can, the six of us, hang out and we not have to talk about church stuff. Like we're actually friends enough that it's not just church stuff, you know? And so, keeping kind of the business separate, quote unquote, the ministry, but it's probably really healthy. That's good. Do you guys use Planning Center as far as your organization?
no, right now we're using Breeze.
But as far as
Like for
like your song service, or
Okay.
what do you guys use for each of your?
Okay,
Everybody
so-
can jump in, but
Yeah, so for like that kind of stuff, right now we're doing. I just type it up, right?
Your song service and your Sunday morning.
Yeah, so I make a order service, or somebody does. They make an order service every week, and we plug in the songs that we've already chosen for that. We do a month out, and I wish we've looked at Planning Center, but I don't know that I can utilize all of that right now, and so we have a jump from Breeze. And there's some benefits and costs and that kind of thing, but and then we're still using, like, I got somebody that copies the music and puts it in, so we always have 4 weeks out so they can look at their binders, but then it's just, we just got binders, we don't have iPads, so.
we still use Breeze for just about everything, and Andrew would offer insight on all of that. But we literally just use, it's $16 a month, and the only thing we use Planning Center for is just organizing our worship team. And so we just have our Sunday order of service. The nice thing about doing it that way is we have all of our chord charts, all of our lead sheets in one platform then, where like the orchestra actually just switched a couple weeks ago to using the iPads for even their sheet music. And so it's helpful for us as far as just unity.
That portion.
Yeah, and if you're a relatively small church, I think we pay $16 a month. And then we pay $5 a month. I don't know whose account that the main stage comes out of. I better be checking my reimbursements, but it might be 16 total, even with main stage. But I think main stage is $5 more a month. And main stage is the app that partners with Planning Center, where you put your OS, your order service, in Planning Center. And then main stage is basically your onboard app, where everything on your order of service just comes up on your main stage app. And so I can come in here and go to services, and I'll pull up, I've got, 6 weeks out or whatever, and it'll show up, where then you just click, and all of your chord charts, whatever, they can download what they
So
want.
you just scan those in and you can put whatever modifications.
I scan in their sheet music, but then with like the chord charts and stuff, there's a way to just physically input them into the program. And so I just literally upload our chord charts and our lead sheets into Planning Center, and then it's all there. I can show you how to do that stuff, but only if you show me how to make a Teams app for our staff. So yeah, that's awesome.
You won't like Teams.
Does that partner with your, it's Microsoft? Does that partner with your Google Calendar and stuff like that then, or?
Yeah, it's versatile. I mean, I got Apple products, but I mean, I still use Teams just because we use Word and PowerPoint and that kind of stuff.
What other stuff have you guys has helped you guys to stay together as far as like whether with your other leaders or with
Well, something that, I mean, is still in process. We're a little over a year as a church plant at this point, and we're a really small church, but we're for the size we are, we're really diverse as far as church background, church tradition. It's, you cover a lot of bases for a really small church really fast, so that's exciting. I love all that, but it's also trying to, some things for me, it's like, and I can relate a lot to what you were sharing, is there's stuff that I've already landed on or understand where I want to go, or like where we want to go. Like, here's the vision, here's the plan, like here's where we want to be. But having to remember that it took me, the amount of years it took me to change myself from here to here, or to understand something better. And there's people that I would say, we technically don't have staff yet, but there are leaders in our church that we meet with and we have accountability with. And so it's that they're not where I'm at, and I have to leave space to be okay with that and walk with them there, and to also learn where I'm flawed in that. So it's like that right balance with that. So kind of a theme for our church right now, just not even with discipling and reaching people, but also just within our church with leadership, is walking together and taking that time. I just had a conversation with someone who's really a key leader for the future of our church. I don't know if he knows that yet, but I found out just last Sunday. I thought he was somewhere with me, and he wasn't there. But he told me, and I was like, "Thank you for telling me." Like I thought you were there. You weren't there yet, and me having to let him know it's okay. There's no pressure from me of, no, you have to be there tomorrow, otherwise you don't fit here. No. You absolutely fit here. Let's walk this journey. And we'll walk to this space where I already am and walk with you on that. So that can be frustrating as a leader, because it's like, I want you to be there right here. And I know that some people feel that way about me as a pastor. It's like, I wish Caleb was doing this, right? So it's that ongoing process within leadership, and training within staff. It's like we're on a journey together, and being comfortable with that process. So God's just been teaching me a lot of patience.
That's awesome.
I mean, I've been in a leadership role for a very long time, in regards to, I've been assistant pastor for a long time, worship leader for a long time. It's the first time I've ever been a senior pastor, and it's like a completely different hat. I didn't know that. So, you think about a lot of things all the time, but there's only certain things that you really care about. Does that make sense? And so, learning a lot of patience and trying to walk through a lot of things.
And a huge part of that is because as a senior pastor, you feel that burden of responsibility. You want to micromanage everything. And that was me early on with these guys, micromanaging things. And one of the things that I think...
I like to micromanage too.
He's not. That's a good thing about it.
But it's true. A lot of us, it's just natural. And so I think a big step has been stepping out of the way and just letting, just like with this whole thing, like I literally have nothing to do with anything this weekend. They told me I had to be in this session. I think that was the only
I sent in my notes on like Thursday, I think.
So it's difficult to let go, but it's so cool to see. Not only does it free you, but it empowers them. Yeah. They take that. As long as you continue to micromanage, they don't feel the control. Right. So it's hard for them to develop a vision, much less cast a vision. Right. You know what I mean? And so Mark and Andrew both have done an amazing job with the different ministries they're responsible for, and it's concerning that you don't know. Like if Mark gets hit by a bus, I don't know what we're gonna do. You know what I mean? Or if the same thing with Andrew, if he gets hit by a bus, I don't know what we're gonna do. Like certain things, I don't know how to turn things on. You know, I don't know who we're supposed to call. You know, that kind of stuff. Where early on, you guys know, you know everything you have to do. Mm-hmm. You want to be trained on all of that. But if you're going to continue to grow and have the margin to invest in people, then you have to let other people take those things.
One thing Akeem Smith was talking about at the Idea Summit in the Lessons for Leaders, I'll send those notes out as well if you guys want them. Just anytime I say I'll send those notes out, remind me and I'll email out whatever you guys want. But he said, I can't remember exactly how he said it, but he said basically delegation without authority is not delegation. And so he said you want to give people accountability and authority when you delegate. And so he said, delegation without clarity leaves them guessing. And so again, he worded it better. I've got it in my notes. But basically the illustration he gave is a lot of times as leaders, we'll say, go get a rock. And he said, but I want a small stone that's gray, but he says, go get a rock. And then they bring it back, and what do? Oh, I wanted a small stone that's great. Come here, I'll just do it this way. Just watch me do it. And then we just go do it. And he says, a leader, to be unclear is to be unkind. So to not say, go get a rock, and then be ticked they brought you a boulder, and go, why'd you do that? To instead go, hey, I want a small gray rock. I want this exact thing, and to give that clarity, and then to go, I'm trusting you to do this. Can you do this? Do you need anything from me? No? Okay, and then when they come back, it's easy to have that conversation.
And they come back and say, but this rock is better.
Yeah, well, the conversation.
Because that happens from time to time. Someone comes to you and says, in the sense of, hey, this is what I'm preaching on. I would like this song. This is good. And they come back and say, well, this one's better. I would be, Josh can speak into this too, but I would say from a worship standpoint, I pray that my heart is clear on this. But if you don't have a worship pastor that is like, he is hired to do that job, it might be different. But like in our context, again, I pray this sounds humble, but there's not many people in our church that have studied out worship culture like I have. Right. And so there are times when Josh might want a certain song that I need to be humble and receive that. But there's also times where as a lead pastor, you also need to be humble enough that you did still hire him to do a job. And so that's just where relationship is built, and you need to be humble in both in the spirit, where if it's really important to you or you really think it's going to make a difference, then pick when you're going to push in. But I would say do not do that extremely often if you have a worship leader, because you're taking his confidence away, you are micromanaging, and ultimately you're telling him that you know better how to do the ministry that he's been called to do than what he does. And so again, there's times like where Josh will say, hey, this song would be great here, or this thing would be great here. But for the most part, now at this point, 5 years into it, again, I don't know how to not sound condescending when I say this, but like he trusts me to do the job that he's told me to do. And we'll have dialogue back and forth and, be open to one another. But it is different when you don't have a specific worship pastor that's been hired. And we've also given 5 years in this thing now. So there's a trust that's built there, So it's very situational. But I would just say, just from the worship leader perspective, be careful not to do that too often if you do it. And then be humble enough to hear their response if they have an argument back. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like we went through an order of service, and I sign off on it. I'm like, that's great. And then we're sitting and we're singing. We typically close our service with a song we've already sung. Because it's familiar, and and then we do a benediction after. Mm-hmm. And I was preaching the message, or I was thinking about the message, as all pastors do, on the song right before we sing, and I thought, man, this song fits so much better. And I can't even remember what it was. It was like 10,000 Reasons, or His Mercy is More. But the song we were ending on was more of a lament, a downbeat. But my message had kind of morphed over the last 2 weeks to be more encouraging and upbeat in that regard. And it just fit. So I remember going through the whole sermon and getting there, and at the end I gave them time. I said, instead of singing this song, the lyrics literally are right out of the text we're using. Let's sing this, but we're going to sing the whole song again. Mm-hmm. And I knew my team that's not going to be a shock to them. Yeah. But it's not something that I would want to do. Yeah. We're going to rearrange all these songs.
It's all situational.
Yeah. But also giving them the time to do that. And it was neat to see the church come along, because it was a song that they sang. I hate to say it like this, but they sang it better the second time. Yeah. I think because it was a response to a teaching. Yeah. And so, but yeah, just working through that, because part of it is also that generational thing, where with my predecessor, the person in that place, not the pastor, but the person in charge of the worship, was pretty much like anything goes. So you like it, do it. And we're having to kind of take a set list of 450 songs down to a manageable. I mean, they'd only sing one song once all year long.
How many, who all still leads music? Is it just you, Daniel? You some Bob? No?
Tony, and you know about personally, or you mean in the church?
On Sundays.
Yeah, so Tony does, but we got multiple people that sing.
One other insight would be to be flexible and be transparent, but one thing that Josh has encouraged me with too is like if your pastor springs something like that on you, or if your team isn't well rehearsed, there's a difference between transparency and a lack of preparation.
Right.
And so if something like that happens, I mean, Daniel, I guess you're the only one I'm speaking to now because you're the only one that this would happen to, but don't make that clear to your people. Like, roll with the punches, be flexible. Don't go, oh, pastor sprung this one on me, or like we didn't get a chance to practice this one. Because frankly, most of your people aren't going to notice it, that you weren't ready for it until you point it out, and it just adds to a distraction.
That's what we tell them. It's like,
So-
I'm going to make a mistake. We're like, just own it.
Yeah.
'Cause no one will know.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I said in this starting from scratch. Operate like you are where you want to be, even if it's just you be organized, be consistent, and be intentional. It's a really easy thing when we're in smaller churches especially, or we're in churches that are used to unpracticed culture, like the song leader just came and looked at the songs the morning of or whatever, to be like, oh, we're just going to wing it, give us your favorite song and we'll sing that one. But there's a point when spontaneity becomes distracting, and so I would just say to be careful when you do those things, even if it is a little bit like we are not ready for tonight. I'll be transparent with you guys. We practiced once, like on Wednesday night for 13 songs, but I'm not going to get up there tonight and be like, hey, everybody, we're not prepared, But when those things happen, it just, it's the Bob Coughlin subtle excellence, presenting a practiced, rehearsed, organized service that's going to be non-distracting. So,
Well, we're called as leaders to do things decently. And
yeah.
So there is a spontaneity, but there should be mostly order.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was no order. My culture as growing up in our church, we would get up and the song leader, we would just flip through. Anybody got a song on their heart? And we would be like, hey, let's do number whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no preparation at all.
Yeah.
Like, there was just the music team.
We call that spirit what?
He's from
Yeah.
Forward Spirits.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, so go figure. So there was different. It was different when coming to a church to where there was actually structure, and it almost felt like too structured, like it's almost too programmed to where we're not allowing the Spirit to move, whatever like that. But I am now seeing so much that it's so needed, because when you feel like there is preparation in what you're doing, you're practiced, you know what you're doing, and then that way you know what you're doing, but you can also allow yourself to worship instead of just worrying about, am I getting the song right? Or am I sounding okay?
Yeah.
Am I singing okay? Or am I hitting every note or whatever? It's just where your focus is off of what you're doing, of the actual trying to make it happen is what you've been all about, is glorifying God and worshiping God. So that was extremely difficult, or I guess eye-opening to have almost like extreme cultures.
Yeah.
Where that was, I had never really seen that. So
Going back to the topic, just to, try to tie a bow on it too. That's the nice thing about, like the whole idea of staff relationships is when we are intentional about this together, we kind of all get to see it happen. So even like I send out a worship email on Monday that has the order of service that everybody sees, and I can send you a copy of that too if you ask me for it, but if you don't, I'll forget. But Monday morning I send out an email, has what each person's doing. It always says the chords are in planning center, and then I'll give just a small snippet of here's why we planned the set the way we did. This is the whether this is the biblical truth that lines up with it or whatever. And that's something that the staff is all included on as well, so that they can all see it too. And so again, it's not like we're not going to be Spirit-led on Sunday, but we're also all kind of preparing our hearts in the same direction too. So, yeah.
The Spirit leads during the week too, not just at
Yeah,
the
isn't
Sunday,
that
right?
important?
So like the Spirit's involved in the planning.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
can only do it at the last minute.
I was going to
actually,
preach this, but I'm not preaching that.
I actually had somebody tell me that they don't rehearse their dialogue in between songs because they like to make room, to. And I said, well, that seems foolish to me, but it's a different strategy. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Were you going to say something?
If I could say one last thing just about staff relationships is the college that I went to, one of the main Bible professors would tell the same story every year to, I think, one of the introductory freshman classes, and he would talk about when he first came to that church, and the first thing the pastor told him to do was go get a wheelbarrow and move this load of rocks from this place to the other place. You tell the rock story reminded me of it. And he said he went out there, it was hot, Eastern Tennessee, he moves the pile of rocks, he goes in, tells the pastor, I'm done moving those rocks, and the pastor tells him, go move them back where I had them. So he went out there and moved them back over there, and then he said, hey, I'm done. He said, well, the reason I had you do that is I wanted to make sure that you were a guy that would, do what I told you to do. And as a freshman, a stupid freshman, I thought, man, that's the right thing,
Mm-hmm.
And now looking back at that style of leadership, I've heard a lot of stories, from people that grew up and worked under that style of leadership. It's incredibly unhealthy, not to mention unspiritual. And now getting a chance to work with these two guys and then also to be kind of mentored by Bill Allison, one of the things that Bill always emphasizes in working together is that you are working together.
Yeah.
We come together to mutually encourage one another, and it's not a teacher-student, it's we are both students learning and growing together. And so in this new study that we're doing on Wednesday nights, it's difficult to look at the New Testament church and not see a plurality of leaders. And so I think it would be wise for us to lead within that context and not take that they're under me, they do what I say mentality, but I'm going to listen and we're going to come together on this. And there have been times where I always feel like I have the best ideas. I mean, these guys will tell you. So when we're shooting stuff around, I'll throw it out there, and Andrew usually goes along with it. Andrew, he'll tell you, he's not an ideas guy, he's an implementation guy. Mark is a likes to fight guy. So I'll throw an idea out there, and Mark will just shoot it down, and I'll argue back, and I'll say, no, I really, and not argue, I'm a healthy way.
Good.
Well, I think that this, well, I feel like, and then Andrew's kind of figuring it all out there with us.
Okay, I'm with you, Phyllis.
Yeah, but it's become much more of a consensus-led, let's move forward like that. And I think that if we're going to have healthy staff relationships, that's where it has to come from, not from a, hey, you go move these rocks mentality. Because that's pride, and I think it's unbiblical.
Can I ask you a staff question about your personal staff? So there was a season where I was preaching through Galatians 3 years ago, and during that season, I would prepare the message ahead of time, and then walk through it, give copies to the staff and walk through it, and then receive feedback and change. Do you guys do anything like that here? Because they would help me change phrasing or illustrations, or that's confusing, and receive feedback on my public speaking.
We did that after going to an idea day. We did that, Andrew, twice? I think it was when Ben was here. Were you here?
I don't think I
It was
was.
when Ben was here. So I sat Ben and Andrew down. It was like, you're going to listen to me preach. And I preached the sermon to them, and they gave feedback. But we only did it like twice.
Yeah.
And so it just wasn't our thing. It didn't work well.
He just didn't like our feedback.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Occasionally, if there's a tough text, I'll bring that to them.
Okay. Because we just sat. I wouldn't like you sitting there, and we just walked through it to see, do you understand it? Is it? And it was very helpful, and we did it for a season, just for that one series, because I felt like Galatians was very weighty, and I didn't want to make a misstep, right? But then after that, we didn't. So I just was curious if that was a regular. I know another pastor friend of mine, he full on preaches. He's got like 6 staff members, and he preaches the message standing at the pulpit every Thursday at 10 a.m.
This last summer, Andrew, Mark, myself, another guy named Sam, and Sean, was Sean in there too?
A couple times.
There was a group of about 5 of us. We were going through the book of John, and so the week ahead, whatever passage I was going to preach, the 5 or 6 of us would gather together and just study that passage.
Oh, yeah,
And
great.
then I would take some of their insights and act like they were my own.
He never had to plan a sermon that whole summer.
Don't give him any ideas.
That whole summer.
He gets his message off the internet anyway.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the clock. The last thing I would encourage you guys with is honestly just that going back to the relationship thing, and I'm the relational guy. Josh will tell you that, but legitimately, it's not because it's convenient or helpful for me. Like, I'm the relationship guy, and relationship is still tricky. But like getting emotional this morning, the reason I did was not because I was trying to make a sale. Although if you made a sale, the tears did it for him. But it legitimately is because seeing Andrew father his children has changed the way that I parent, and seeing Josh father his children has changed the way I parent. And so having those relationships with one another where you are doing life together, he is an expert in that field. By God's grace, it's not, oh, Andrew's great. Josh is an expert when it comes to leading teams and being organized and to structure. Like, those are the things that they are great at. And so being able to actually build relationships with these people and recognize, like, I can learn from them in this area or that area is really helpful. So continue the conversation as we go forward, but we'll be dismissed and go have some lunch. So Pastor Andrew, do you mind praying for us? And then we'll go down and have some lunch if you guys want.